The Nike Vomero 16, 100 plus miles. We got some interesting developments. Let's talk about them. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Filip Latocha. As you can already guess by the title and the intro, we're talking about the Nike Vomero 16 after 100 plus miles. And some of the interesting developments I've had with it, some updates in terms of some information, and basically how the shoe is riding at this point in time. So before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're already subscribed to the channel, watching the content, thanks so much. I love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for some other social media updates and things like that. So without further ado, specs are up here. Let's talk about the shoe. So the first thing I guess we should probably talk about is a minor correction I have from the previous reviews I've had of this shoe. So previously I was saying that there's ZoomX in this shoe, but there was also React that is surrounding the ZoomX in order to give it a more stabilized feeling. I'm going to start issuing my first correction here, is that we have actually a third style of foam that gets introduced from a previous generation of the shoe, the Vomero 15, which is the SR02 foam. And this is kind of a combination of React and ZoomX, where it's supposed to be a lot more stable. It's also supposed to remain fast and kind of reliant. And essentially, with the ZoomX being the fast foam that it is, it's going to need some kind of stability compound if it's not a racing shoe, in order to keep this shoe from, having your ankles bend too much in one direction or the other. So the SR2 is basically the foam that is surrounding the shoe in various places that keep the ZoomX from basically being too bouncy and too unstable to make the shoe just, not usable. And this is obviously, again, my other statements still stand, as they do, which is that the ZoomX Invincible, with ZoomX all around the, the outsole of the shoe and the insole, being the only foam on that shoe, made it very unstable. And it kind of made it a tricky run overall, whereas the Vomero 16, it takes that and kind of engineers it just a little bit more, but also under-engineers a lot of other things to make the shoe a little bit less complicated, if you know what I mean. So that was the first correction I want to make. Let's basically just show off, what the outsoles for me look like after 100 plus miles, so you guys got an idea of what I'm dealing with here. So here we go. This is our broad picture. That is my left foot, typically the cleaner of two shoes, and that's my right foot, which always has some cool stuff going on. However, this time around, I've got probably two developments to showcase. One is, of course, for my running form, and one is also the conditions of which I'm running with this shoe. So first and foremost, I guess we can obviously talk about the right foot, because that's always the weird one, right? In this case, you can see that I have a lot of wear in my obvious area, which is kind of the outside of the shoe, and it is kind of, polishing itself out. I also have a little bit wear in the upper toe area, toe box piece of this shoe. And the reason for this is one of two things. One, of course, it is my running form that is playing a role in this, but we'll get to that in a minute. But also, with my new running routes, there's a lot more hills and a lot more downhill sections that I have to play around with. And as a result of this, I'm braking a lot with this shoe. And I think in a future video where I'm going to basically talk about one of my race recaps from this weekend, I'll kind of go into a little more depth as to why this is creating issues. But just the TLDR in this case is that when I'm running down hills, I am braking. I'm not trying to just let loose like a cannon and just see what happens. I do actively brake on downhills so I don't lose control while I'm running, especially in a shoe that could be a little bit more unstable, like the Vomero 16 in some cases. It's better for me to brake, and as a result, we have that friction of me using my forefoot area to hit the ground and brake with a toe first kind of strike, and then as a result, that's kind of why the shred and the implants or the pegs here in this area are getting forced down in this direction that is more facing the toe box rather than the other way around. So that's kind of the one thing to address. And as you can see probably in the left shoe, it is also very similar, closer to the forefoot toe box area, that same type of shred. So you can see that both shoes are in a way burning the same way, and my running form is ultimately improving as time goes along. But there's going to be some wear and tear that's just going to be more as a result of the conditions of which I'm running in, which is no longer going to be always flat in the new area that I live in. So that's one thing, of course, to address. Now, there's one neutral comment and I guess one con that I would like to address here. So the neutral comment is, particularly with the Vomero 16, I noticed this, is when I'm striking on the ground, it seems like the toe box, I know this is a 10 millimeter stack height, or like right about 8.5, kind of 9 millimeter stack height overall. What I'm noticing is that my foot seems to tip more to the forefoot whenever I strike with this shoe. And that, as a result, it's kind of interesting. I don't think I've realized this maybe to the point that I have. Maybe because I'm not watching like how my foot lands in like a mirror or something like that, or like glass when I'm running past a building, like what my form in the shoe looks like. But it seems to come off to me that I am definitely striking more with this forefoot area as a result, rather than having more of like that midfoot strike. And now I know that I'm a more of like a toe box forefoot kind of striker, but it seems more prevalent in this shoe. And I don't know if it's because of the weight of the shoe, if there's something about the heel that's just a little bit heavier, maybe, you know, my calves are working a little bit harder to lift this area more to have this toe box strike, and then the ankles take kind of a brunt of the force. Not 100% sure. Don't know how that's going to play out in the future as we go along here, but that's just something I noticed. So the second thing here is, now, actually there's probably going to be like two cons to address with this shoe so far in time. One that I've heard before previously, and then one that I've discussed in a different shoe before. The easy one, of course, is one, the shoe is definitely a little bit noisy. It's not at the scale of the Tempo Next % noisy, but it is no Hoka One One Mach 4. I'll say that much. So this shoe basically does generate a lot of noise in this like forefoot area. Not sure if it's because it's the technology, if this is just because it's just one big outsole, and then, you know, just that strike is just giving it that loud, large impact. But it is kind of noisy. You can hear me from a distance, which I guess isn't bad if you don't want to startle people. But yeah, the shoe is noisy, so if you're trying to go through like a quiet run, or you're trying to be quiet on the treadmill, not a chance in heck that it's going to happen with this shoe. That's one thing. The second thing here, that's a con that I'm noticing, particularly in the left foot, and this also happened in the Pegasus 38, is the Air Zoom pocket. And now here's something, I guess, that I want to put like an asterisk to. The Air Zoom pocket kind of, sort of, like, that area does kind of flutter on the foot, and I do feel a little bit of soreness and tenderness in that area. It's not as bad as the Pegasus 38 was, but I do sometimes feel it in the left foot. The second thing to tie that with is some days, and maybe this is because of how the shoe locks down for me in some instances, some days it feels like that Air Zoom pocket is farther up on the foot, and it doesn't feel like it's necessarily behind like the ball of my foot, but it's moved up a little bit closer to the toes. And that seems to be more ideal. I like that a lot better than, you know, the same area where the Peg 38 was kind of hitting with the shoe. So in a way, one of the issues with the Air Zoom pocket that happened with the Peg 38 is sort of happening here, but not nearly as bad as like the previous rendition. There's a couple more resistances in this shoe that kind of prevent this from being a much larger issue. And now here's my one major con, which is why the Vomero 16 gets to stay in my lineup, is that the shoe is reliable and extremely consistent. So if I need to keep it for like that everyday run, this shoe's the one, right? It's like I'm not going to just wake up and run with this and be like, oh man, like I'm so tired, I'm going to run a 9 minute per mile pace, or oh, I don't want to run too fast, I don't want to run like 650s and this kind of thing. This shoe says, when I run with it, it definitely feels like it's basically saying, okay, we're staying between 7:15 per mile and 8 minute per mile, no exceptions. And like, that to me is good, because it keeps just overall the shoe just staying consistent in that fashion, because that's what ultimately I'm looking for. I'm not looking for a shoe that like I'll wake up and I'm just going to feel like I'm either dragging with the shoe or the shoe is dragging me for the workout. I need something that essentially, when, you know, it's like a post-race recovery day and I'm intentionally trying to stay slow, the shoe's not going to kick me to that, you know, like 650 pace to be like, oh yeah, this is a good recovery pace, regardless of the weather, and that like adds a bunch of other complications. I digress. But the idea is, like, I know what I'm going to expect when I run with the shoe. I'm not going to be putting in some sort of PR. I'm not going to be like a king of the hill in this shoe. I'm going to have like a more slightly above to about MAF tone heart rate workout with this shoe. And that's all I ask for, is just to have that everyday type of sensation where, I can wake up and run with this shoe and not really hurt myself or do anything that's too slow that doesn't necessarily feel like a productive workout. Or if I need to hit certain paces during the day, that workout will be accomplished with this shoe. I can rely on it. So I think that's where I'm going to end the video here. And I guess, yeah, the overall summary so far is like, I guess the best way to put it is, minus the fact that I do have to wash it again, as you can see from like, the toe box area, it's collecting some salt and whatnot. Minus all of that, so far so good. There's a lot of good things rolling with the Vomero 16. I do have to kind of readjust the fitting, of course, in the left foot specifically because of that air zoom pocket. But the wear and tear in the right foot is, after, at this point, I think it's like 100 plus miles, maybe like 120, 130. It's not looking bad, and as long as I don't start cutting up this outsole to the point where the shoe is unusable, I think we're going to have a good time in this shoe moving forward in the terrain that I'm running in, which is mostly hills and roads and things like that. So if you guys have any questions about the shoe, just let me know in the comments below. I think unless I have any other major developments in the next 20 to 30 miles, I probably won't do a 150 plus mile review of the shoe. Otherwise, I will try to do a 200 plus just to start assessing how this outsole is beginning to look. But I think that's all I've got for now with the Vomero 16. So again, thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, follow me on social media for other updates and things like that. But yeah, that's all I've got. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.